mention it, yeah.
Now that you mention it, mention it, mention it,
Yeah.
Now you mention it, yeah.
now that you mention it, mention it, mention it.
Yeah.
We're in the stew.
The new and improved stew.
It's improved.
Welcome to the Now That You Mention It podcast with Kevin and Dane. I'm Dane.
I'm Kevin.
Bro, so direct deposit is always such a letdown
Why?
because I always convince myself after the 2-week period, like when I actually get the direct deposit and open my bank app and see what has been deposited, it is always so disproportionate to the anguish
That went through.
that it's like not reflective of the
Right.
past 2 weeks.
Right.
It's yeah.
The worst thing about direct deposit though is it seems as though as soon as your check hits your bank account, everybody who you owe money to, like instantaneously,
the deductions.
it's like damn. So that's probably another reason. You probably had that phone bill or something come out immediately.
It's just like so I've gone to work every day on time for the past 2 weeks. And then this is what 2 weeks of my life is worth in a monetary sense. It goes back to what we were talking about last time.
Yeah, no, that's real.
Yeah.
That's trash.
The fuck.
Like, people are really getting lowballed. But, I mean, that's capitalism, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
You know, that's how you gotta make money. Well, that's how you make money. You gotta make sure that the people who work for you don't make that much, but make enough to be able to get up and come back to work.
All right. Today we are doing a deep dive on hype and hype beasts.
Those scoundrels.
So I think our central question today is, what is hype? Where does it come from? And what constitutes a hype beast? And I think in order to answer that question, you pretty much have to answer the question, what is fashion? Because I think for our purposes, for the most part, hype and fashion are kind of going to be interchangeable terms. How do you feel about that?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So the pieces we looked at were Fashion, a Philosophy by the philosopher Lars Svensson. We read an article by Malcolm Gladwell, which was, what was it called?
The Cool Hunt?
The Cool Hunt, right? And then we looked at the work of Joel Dinerstein, who...
Yeah. I don't know which one
it's awkward either way.
Yeah, it is.
But his book is The Origins of Cool in Post-War America. So we're gonna bring him in. But I guess I can start by just sort of laying out the problems that go along with trying to answer a question like, what is fashion?
Go for it.
Well, what is hype? What is fashion? Let's take a stab at it.
You go first.
Okay, so I'm just interrupt me if my monologue goes on too long. Okay, so the central question that this philosopher Lars Svensson asks is, what do fashion choices really say about the wearer? Like, he kind of takes it for granted that fashion says something. He says it's central to the formation of identity. Like, consumption, one of the tenets of his book is consumption is one of the main areas of self-formation. But in the intro to his book, he sort of lays out a number of observations about fashion as a phenomenon that sort of, when you take them together, they illustrate how difficult of a concept it is to pin down. So I'll just run through some of these really quick. So he starts off by saying that fashion is clearly seen as important enough to warrant an insane amount of our attention. Like, there's whole ass magazines about fashion. The New York Times has a style section. Like, fashion related stories routinely just pop up in like the regular ass news media.
Right.
Or Svensson says, quote, maybe the converse is true. Maybe it's all the attention that makes fashion important. So you sort of have this confusing idea. Is it the fashion itself that's important, or is it all the attention we lavish upon fashion that makes it seem important? Is that does fashion have any inherent quality?
Right.
Is pretty much the question he's driving at. He also says that fashion has to do inextricably with being modern. So fashion has to do with modernism in that it's a break from tradition, which we'll get into. And he quotes Walter Benjamin, who says that fashion is the, quote, eternal recurrence of the new. So he's sort of identifying fashion as a phenomenon that has to do inextricably with modernism and that has to do with the unceasing project of getting to the newest shit.
Right.
The new as related to fashion.
Which is modernism.
Right. Change for the sake of change itself. Right. And then he goes on to say that people who think about fashion generally fall into one of two camps. There are those that claim that fashion refers just to clothing, which he says is actually it's a tenable position. But he also says there are those that claim that fashion is a general mechanism, logic, or ideology that, among other things, applies to the area of clothing as well. So if you see it as a general mechanism, lots of shit can be included under the umbrella term fashion. Manners, language usage, politics, art, even body shape, which is, I think pretty obvious, that fashion is more than just clothing. It has to do with a lot of stuff. And just to illustrate this really quick, he says, fashion clearly doesn't refer to all clothes. We can't say that every article of clothing necessarily is fashionable or is included under the term fashion. And there's a bunch of stuff that clearly is fashion that has nothing to do with clothes at all. And fashion, he says, fashion has as much to do with what people choose not to wear as it does what they do wear.
He said a hat could be not fashionable. It could be not fashionable to wear a hat or something at a particular time. So
exactly.
Yeah.
To have facial hair, to not have facial hair. And then so after all these observations, I'm gonna try to keep going really quick, and then we can open it up. Pause. Fashion. So he basically is saying fashion means something, but what does it mean? It's not clear. Fashion is trying to mean something. And he's saying there's a link between fashion and identity, but what is the nature of that link? And these are kind of the open-ended questions. And so I think it'll be a little instructive also, or a little helpful to just talk about fashion as related to the emergence of the individual. So in traditional societies, pre-Renaissance Western societies, an individual's identity was predefined for them. You were born into a certain social order and there was no class mobility, and that was it. Society worked to give you your identity. But then you have the Renaissance and shit like that, and then all of a sudden individuals are thought of as individuals, and you have to differentiate yourself as this allegedly unique human being, and clothing becomes a way to do that.
Right. And it was also a class, it still remained a class marker as well, because the fashion was still sort of relegated to those of privilege, right?
Right. Okay. So I think the thing there is that the move away from just totally functional clothing to clothing as a medium of expressing one's identity. And then so I can sort of leave it there with the problem that clothing is not a particularly well-suited medium for expressing your allegedly unique individuality.
Right.
So I don't know, where do you want to go from there? I think for me, trying to answer these questions, what does it say about someone that they're wearing a certain brand? It's sort of this circular thing for me. It says that they're the type of person who would wear that brand. And it's really it's been, as much as we've thought about it, because we did an earlier rough draft of this episode too, it's really hard for me to try to tack it down or just see what else there could be. What do you think?
Yeah. I think the word banal is very apropos to this discussion. So as Dinerstein, well, I don't know how.
Dinerstein,
whatever bro's name is. He talked about the origins of cool, right? And he's he defines cool as he says it's the process through which iconic rebels carve out new cultural space for a given generation, right? So I'm thinking of it in terms of this idea of cool being fashionable, you know, but at that time with the whole idea of iconic rebels, there was this sort of politicization of it, right? Of what the cool was. But then he talks about you have marketing cool. And with marketing cool, that's where you get into all the branding, all the shit where it's just like consumption based. And so for that, I think that's where the word banal comes in at, like purely unoriginal. Like this shit, when you look at the fashion choices that people make, it's completely unoriginal. It's just whatever's popping at that time. That's what I'm going to gravitate towards, and that's what I'm going to do in order to sort of, because it's been packaged and branded as cool, me buying it is me saying, okay, I'm cool, or this is my stamp of approval in terms of my coolness. And so that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, so maybe if I had to like add an ingredient to Svensson's definition of fashion, or like lack of a definition of fashion, it would be sort of inserting this notion of the cool. Like we buy or like Supreme is super sought after because it's been identified as a cool brand, like cool people wear it, and it's got this whole like pre-packaged identity that comes with it. But once again, it seems like it's surface level. Like I don't know what the identity actually entails.
Right. And I think that that's the part that, as Benjamin pointed out, is the never ending, the unceasing sort of pursuit of the cool, of the new, right? And so that's where that comes in at, is that I don't think that you ever are able to fulfill that identity in terms of whatever your fashion choices or, you know, choice in brand may be. I don't think that you'll ever be able to fully define yourself by that, but the pursuit of it through the consumption of those particular brands and its cool and the coolness associated with it is sort of what cats are like.
Well, should we give a little background on what cool is? Because I feel like people hear cool and sort of, it's one of those terms that actually has a pretty rich history in terms of what it really means. But yeah, so cool is something that came out of like a set of Black American styles. Like, I mean, does it predate World War II?
Jazz? No, it's probably around that.
It probably comes out in like the 50s, but
no, I would say like, yeah, it's probably simultaneously like occurring.
So cool, like I said, was like a set of Black American styles, like an embodied philosophy. And so I think it's important to say that there can be genuine expressions of individuality, or there have been in the past. Now it's sort of more difficult to see how that would be true. But so the modern usage of the term cool comes from the tenor saxophone player Lester Young, who he was like this one of the first like rebel individuals in like the swing era culture, and he was the first person to say like, I'm cool. And what that meant was he's relaxed, and you might not think that's a super big deal, but if you like contextualize it, for a Black man to say that in that time period was like a pretty profound statement. So that's where like the idea of wearing sunglasses at night comes from, as a way of protecting the wearer from the white gaze. Like, society treats me like shit, so I'm not even gonna let them. I'm gonna wall myself off. So yeah, Dinnerstein says Lester's set of stylistic choices were all about defying racism and maintaining an individuality that the dominant white society didn't even think Black Americans had. So genuine expression via clothing and style is possible, as evidenced by the formation of the cool in that era. But then I think, to get to what you were saying about brands sort of pre-packaging that rebellion, or like anticipating the rebellion and then selling it back to the cats who buy it, then now it's like that shit is played out. It's hard to see how that could result in a genuine expression of individuality.
So I have an example of, and so I think like when he talks about when Dinnerstein, what when he talks about when he like provides that definition, the process through which iconic rebels carve out new cultural space, right? I think there's there's that break again, as in modernism as a whole. Like there's that break with tradition, and so I think of like Kanye, right?
All right.
Think of the whole Yeezy, whether you like the chunky dad shoes or not.
Are you talking about which ones are you talking about?
The 700s.
Okay.
So,
chunky.
Yeah.
The chunkers.
Right. So, if you think about that, Kanye sort of gave us that break with this, particular style, right? And this is the style that's now dominating.
It's what's fashionable.
Right? But you think about Kanye being sort of that trailblazer, so I guess you could possibly throw him into that rebel carving out something, right?
Yeah.
Versus Balenciaga, who lands on the marketing cool side of it, where they're taking what Kanye did, and now it's like, oh, that's the wave. We're gonna throw out the chunkiest.
Yeah.
The most
we're
absurd.
OD on chunkers.
We're gonna throw out the most absurd, shoe that follows this aesthetic as we possibly can, so you guys can buy it because this is what's cool.
Right.
And that's where, like you said, this sort of anticipation of, they saw that and was like, oh, that's the wave. We're on it, and we're on it OD.
Yeah. And it's interesting because after reading Svensson and when he's sort of trying to separate out what makes fashion, like what quality makes something fashionable or not, he says it doesn't necessarily even have to do with the new, because like you can imagine an old ass leather jacket that your dad had in his closet from the 70s or 80s,
right,
and all of a sudden Katz is wearing that now. So like now that has become fashionable. So it's like that's not a new.
No.
That's not new.
No.
It's just been so.
It's been recycled.
And that's the thing with the Kanye thing. It's like the clunky dad shoes are just like you said before. That was like the prototypical white suburban dad mowing the lawn wearing some trash shoes,
right?
Like, and now all of a sudden it's high fashion and it's supposedly some kind of statement.
Exactly.
Shit.
And it's so funny that the suburban white dad is now this aesthetic of the rebel in
the fanny pack.
Right. It's so crazy.
The fanny pack is egregious.
Yeah, the fanny pack is trash. And then cats try to spice it up and throw it around like it's like a little sling bag.
Yeah, the sachet.
Yeah.
No, it's not even the satchel.
It's
like a satchel. It's like but like, and the fucked up thing is, out the other day, this just shows how like, I don't know, like mutable people are. Maybe just me, but like the other day I saw one in like a window display. I was like, shit, should I rock that?
Oh no.
And then I caught myself like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? And
that's where the banality comes into play at. So like, to kind of go on a quick tangent, Hannah Arendt talks about the banality of evil in association with Nazi Germany, particularly Eichmann, the Eichmann trial, where she basically lays out the fact that this person isn't inherently evil. He's just a part of this. He's just a byproduct of a society that has turned in a certain way that has turned evil, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you think about like us in this hypebeast era, right? You are a part of this society, whether you like it or not. And so you walking by and you seeing cats. I mean, you seeing the shit in the display. You see cats, rocking the Supreme satchel and the Palace fanny pack and shit like that. You're like, I could kind of rock that shit.
Exactly. And it's like where do our desires really come from? And the fact that, and I was thinking about it too, then it bugged me out even more, because the fact that I then caught myself and sort of like accused myself, like, yo, that's not you. That just proves Svensson's point, like, what we wear or not wear has something to do with our identity. I clearly thought that putting that on would be like a violation of who
you are,
like some deeper sense of like who I am. Like, nah, I can't do that shit. That's not me. But then it's like, but what a superficial thing. How fickle and shallow is my personality if it depends on what I'm wearing? if what we wear somehow is reflective of our like deeper selves. You know what you know what I mean?
But I mean, I guess fashion is a way. If you think about it, it is a way to sort of like try to express that individuality. It's just I don't think people understand the sort of larger superstructure that's at play. You know, the larger society that, you know, dictates desires and things like that. So, you know, you may think that you have a free choice in whatever it is that your likes and dislikes are, but a lot of that shit is, you know, just social programming. And so to break away from that shit, you know, is like you just being sort of, you having a deeper consciousness of, you know, of how this shit operates versus the cat who is just chasing the cool in a sense, because that's what society is telling us that's what we need to do right now.
Yeah, and I just keep coming back to like, what does fashion mean? And I sort of started formulating like a counterpoint where I was thinking, you know, if you have someone who is always super prim and proper and has a button down and khakis and some kind of preppy vibe, maybe they're hoping to express to the world that they're like a well organized, life together, serious type of person. Like in a really like, I'm broad generalizations right now.
Right.
But then I was like, well, like you have these like white, like you have these like Wall Street bros that rock that shit all day every day, and it even bleeds into their personal, like you see them on the weekend and they're fucked up.
Right.
Like, so it ultimately, like I can think of a counterexample for every example. So it's like I keep coming back to how superficial of how it's trying to say something, but I cannot figure out what it's saying. Like, what does it mean that I'm wearing a Supreme shirt right now?
It means that you're trash.
Yes.
It means that you're absolute garbage. That's
what does it mean that we gravitate towards these brands?
I don't know.
And that's the thing, that hype is so compelling for some people, even for you and me at certain moments.
Oh yeah.
And it's like there has to be some other, or maybe there doesn't, but to me it's like there needs to be some sort of explanatory factor that's like, why are people waiting in lines for hours and hours every Thursday morning to get this shit? Right. And then it's like there's another layer of sort of contradiction or paradox where it's like the assumption is that you're getting this stuff to express some kind of individuality, but it's like the dude in the line
got the same shit.
It doesn't matter how it's an exclusive drop or whatever. You're seeing other people buy the same shit in the same off-white shit, in the same shoes that are hot right now, the same fanny pack and shit. So I don't understand, and I think we could have done more. Or there's probably like a whole literature out there about like trends and fads, and like how shit just like catches fire and then it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And maybe like that's a question for like sociology or something like that. Like I'm not.
I would think that, like, I guess looking at how. Yeah, it might be a sociological question, just in terms of how people are socialized. Like, what is it about this particular era, right, in fashion that, you know, makes the joggers and the chunky dad shoes and the fanny pack fire, but 10 years ago you would have been laughed at if you were caught rocking that shit, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think that I think mass media, you know, the fact that we have the internet, a lot of that shit is in play now, where I think before individuals like in regional styles and shit could develop, right now I think the world is so small that it's so easy to market to everyone. So for Supreme, all they have to do is, you know, drop some shit on Instagram, right? And everybody around the world sees what the new drop on Thursday is going to be. And if you're in New York, LA, Japan, whatever the fuck, you know what I'm saying, you can go cop that. And so I think that based on the fact that you do have this shit where it's just like everywhere all at once, that the individuality that's associated with fashion, or that people assume was associated with fashion, has been like greatly diminished based on just how small, the internet and shit has made the world in general.
I think you're right, and I'm also thinking about the Malcolm Gladwell piece, to quickly bring that in, The Cool Hunt, where he talks about, and I'm sort of blanking on, I'm trying to pull up the article, but I'm sort of blanking on the language he uses, but you sort of have the waves, like the first people to do something, and then it sort of trickles down, and then there's the second wave, and then by the third wave it's like entrenched culturally or whatever. But still, it's like, what is it about, like the first adopters? I think maybe that's sort of similar to the language he uses of a trend. What is it about the thing that they adopt or innovate with that leads that thing to catching on, and not some other shit that they, like, had they chosen to do something else, would that have caught on? Is it what is it about the phenomenon itself, or the thing itself, that people start adopting, that leads to it becoming a fad or a trend?
I wonder how that relates to not so much of what that thing is, right? But who does it.
I was thinking that too.
So like the fact that like Kanye was the one who, came with the suburban dad fits, that shit caught on because of how, the media and fans and everybody views Kanye, as cool, going back to that. Before he started wigging out and shit. But yeah, so like thinking about it, like it might be, smart for us to sort of, I guess, change our, focus and look at who this shit, like who's starting these trends and who's rocking shit. Like before, like Supreme was super underground, right? Then you have, certain rappers. I remember being introduced to Supreme like that through Dipset, like seeing Jewels and Jim Jones rock it, and so that was like, oh, these dudes are cool, right? For whatever that word is worth, right, or that concept, these dudes are cool, and they're rocking Supreme. Let's look and see what the fuck Supreme is, and then that's where this, So I think it has a lot to do with that, because cats could be rocking Supreme in fucking Kazakhstan right now and nobody will fucking know it, and then it will never catch on, and you know what I'm saying? Like I'm sure cats in remote places are doing some fashionable shit right now, and no one sees it because no one knows who they are.
Yeah.
So.
Well, shit. So I'm still fucking mystified about what hype is. I know what a hype beast is for sure.
What's a hype beast?
Well, it's like, God, why do I always fall back on this quote? But it's like that Supreme Court justice who said, I couldn't define pornography, but I know it when I see it, or whatever. It's like, I know these cats.
Right.
I know these kids.
Right. They're the ones who are standing in line, waiting on the kid to drop. And, even though palette shit is fire.
They got the Gucci flip-flops.
Oh, no.
And they... All right, well, maybe we should wind down this preliminary discussion and take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll have a Supreme representative standing trial. All right. All right, welcome back.
Bro, that's loud as fuck.
Sorry, Jesus Christ. All right, welcome back to the Now That You Mentioned It podcast. We got a special guest named William.
What's good, guys?
Will Jones is in the stew.
What's poppin', Will?
What's Gucci, man? Just chilling.
He's our fashion correspondent. No, but first, wait, Kevin, did you have a thing?
I think I'll just mix it in
Okay.
through the combo.
Okay, well, I have a side for our opening segment with Will. Kevin, I want you to be the arbitrator of this issue. Will said that 2 food items were like the most insanely white shit he'd ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
The first was a corn dog.
It's white as hell.
Is this? I wasn't aware that corn dogs were a white.
Look, when we first moved in, I go in the freezer. I see a box of corn dogs. You don't.
You know who bought them?
Yeah.
Chill.
First thing I said, I was like, all right. I never seen Brian eat a corn dog ever. I knew Brian forever. Like, dang, yeah. Culprit.
Okay. The other thing was a wedge of iceberg lettuce
That's crazy.
with blue cheese dressing on it and pieces of bacon.
Okay, that's probably like the whiter item.
Really? Than a corn dog?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, you gonna make a salad. Like,
Yeah, right. And I mean, like, and I'm not saying that.
Yeah, but the wedge of lettuce is like that's a staple. You could go to a restaurant and get that.
Right, but I think that's his point.
Yeah. It's not like specific, right? It's not like, oh, you're not going to like a Spanish restaurant getting a wedge of lettuce. You're not going to an African restaurant getting a wedge of lettuce. You're going to like the American restaurant to get a wedge of lettuce.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I have like very
I'm kind of on the fence about the corn dogs. I mean, I personally don't eat corn dogs like that,
See?
but I definitely know like my nieces and nephews like fuck corn dogs up and shit like that.
Yeah, but like at the fair or at the like, they're not gonna be in the freezer.
Okay, but let me just say that
Sometimes
this was
they're in
not
the
a
freezer,
regular real.
Yeah, so, and that's why I said like I'm kind of on the fence about that one. The wedge of lettuce, that's definitely like.
Both of these things are not regular occurrences in my diet. This was just I was at the supermarket and I saw a pack of corn dogs and I said I like hot dogs. Are hot dogs white?
Pause.
I haven't had a hot dog in about 6 years. That's just personal. I don't know what
hot dog is a white food.
I don't think it is though.
No, I don't think it is.
That's universal. Hot dog's universal.
Hot dog's universal. I thought this is the
Steak.
logic. I thought corn dogs also were like hot dogs a universal.
But a breaded hot dog. I mean, not like it's like a deep fried bread. It's not just like, oh, I have a hot dog bun. It's like
yeah, like I said, I'm kind of on the fence about the corn dog.
I digress.
But for sure the wedge of lettuce, bro, is
It's
like
crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
Are you telling me you wouldn't enjoy that?
I'm not necessarily saying that, but the question was,
good.
is it a white thing?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fuck.
All right, so corn dogs, universal. Fuck it. Wedge of lettuce, it's white.
That's white.
Yes, sir.
That's white.
What are the other like mayo is just
That's white as hell.
Yeah, that's
insanely
white
white.
shit.
But like on the spectrum of this will be the last thing on the spectrum of like mayo being the most white shit, the most white food. Where is wedge of lettuce? Is it like right underneath it?
There's a lot of other white shit like casserole. and
Yeah,
shit like that, so.
yeah. Right, bro. Like, right. The casserole shit is that's y'all can keep the casseroles, bro.
Yeah. I mean,
my dad would make a tuna casserole when we were kids.
my dad would make a tuna casserole.
No, bro.
I've had casserole before, so
Right.
fuck. This is like hard hitting racial politics.
Yeah, no, this is.
All right, so Will, the question that we are trying to answer is like, what does wearing a certain brand, especially a brand that has a lot of hype around it, like a Supreme, what does that say about the person who's wearing it? So that's one question, which we can start to try to answer, and then the other question is like, I want to know your opinion on what explains like just how crazy people go over a brand like Supreme, and like you're a first-hand witness to that shit. Like what explains just the phenomenon of like the lines and the insane prices. So I just want to get like I think.
So to answer the first question, like all right, so you have two type of people.
Oh wait, should we say is it cool with you? Like
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so Will has worked at Supreme downtown for
4 years.
4 years. So yeah, so go ahead.
I witnessed all the craziness, but it's like it's two type of people that wear Supreme. Three type of people. You got the actual skater. You know what I mean? So me seeing like me, like I started wearing it. I'm skating in it. I was like, I couldn't afford it. Like dudes at the shop like, here, take this, take that. And I'd just be skating. Like I didn't know what it's worth. I didn't care about its worth. I just wanted to skate. So that's like the average skater can't really afford Supreme. You know what I mean? It's fucking expensive. Right. When I was out skating, I could barely have money for food and shit. But like, then you got just a crazy ass little like 9-year-old kid, like from like 9 to like 14, who like just sees people in it, and you know like the influence like rappers and stuff have on these children. So then they're like, you know what, I gotta get this because so and so wore it.
Exactly.
So like I have to do it. Like I have to do it. Then you have the fucking adult, the kook from like fucking 20 to 30 who just like wants to like resell it and like take it from the kids. You know what I mean? Like you got the kids waiting online with their parents, and you got like fucking 4 27-year-olds just like, yo, when you go in there, like, yo, buy me this. So like our kids coming out like, yo, bro, I give you $60 to like over it. And, like, dude, you're 27, bro. Like, it's I see like I got into an argument with a dude the other day. He came in with his like 4-month-old. Like, dude, shouldn't you be like being a dad?
You're in fucking line for
You're
Supreme.
in line, dude, with your kid. Your kid needs to eat, bro. He's 4 months. And he's arguing with me, like trying to return something because he couldn't sell it. It's like, dude, you're 28. Like, what are you doing? So, like,
And so, what do you think? Like, what motivates like those type of cats?
like the older cats?
Yeah, like what is it? Because you said there was like the actual skaters, which I totally
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
There's like the little kids that are maybe using mommy and daddy's credit card that are like getting
Yeah,
bags and
yeah.
bags of shit. Because I've seen that in person. And then so the older cats that are like, what do you think? Are they trying to stay young? Like, what is it that they're?
So a lot of the older cats was like, this is back when like the Jordan game. You think like the Jordan game is dead now, but like 5 years ago, like Jordans was like the thing. Like like everybody was getting. So a lot of those dudes were younger at that time. So once the Jordan thing faded away, they're like, how can I continue to make this money that I was just making because nobody's buying these Jordans anymore?
Oh,
Okay.
so you're saying like they're like
resellers.
reselling.
They've always been resellers,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they haven't really mentally stepped into adulthood yet. So they act like children, you know?
And like, so about the like resale game, because I think that's part of like this whole idea of like why, you know, a brand like Supreme is like so desirable and shit, is like the fact that like you have cats who are like willing to go stand in line for hours to, you know, get something that's, you know, you only making a certain amount of pieces of, and then selling it online for some absurd amount. Like, how does that sort of like play into like this whole idea of making Supreme this coveted brand like that?
You mean like
how, yeah, like how does like resellers like, you know, I guess you could say like kind of perpetuate like this idea of Supreme being something that like you gotta have, like if you know.
Okay, because they buy it all, you know, like those 10 adults, you know what I mean? They get little kids who just like, I'll give you $20, shorty, stand in line for me and get this for me. They're like, all right, because like while they're waiting online, it's like those dudes like they kind of create like they're like a society within a sense, you know what I mean? They like all know each other, so it's like, oh, back again next week, like, you know what I mean? So they all just hanging like it's like a party to them. They're all on the line, like all know each other. They're all going in for one person. It's like it's like 4 people that like pay like a couple like 50, 60 kids to stand in line. So like they all know each other. They're all just drinking, smoking on the line. It's like it's a party to them. They look forward to that within their week. Like, yo, this Thursday, yo, I see you next Thursday, bro. Like yo, you bring the bud. Like
That's kind of interesting though, cause like to say like all these cats are like getting little kids to stand in line to buy shit, to go in the store and buy shit for them. It like kind of like makes you rethink the sort of the actual hype around it when you think about those people in line now, because it's like most of them are in line buying the shit for somebody, so it's probably not really cats who like are genuinely like, I'm camping out here because I want to buy this particular shirt or some shit like that.
But the thing is, there are those cats, but by the time they get into the store, all this shit is gone to so-and-so up the street. Right. That's the fucked up thing about it.
Yeah, so maybe it's like, I feel like part of what explains all the craziness is that cats know that this shit is going to be gone like that, and that the resale is going to like go crazy.
Right.
So like, if you're coming to it with a mentality of like, oh, I shouldn't even try, I'm going to have to pay like an exorbitant amount of money just to get a t-shirt, it's like that creates a sort of like aura around the brand, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's just a regular t-shirt, but like that there are people out there that are willing to pay $300 for a t-shirt or whatever. It's like you're like, the mentality is like, oh, there must be something about this t-shirt that is worth it for cats to buy, to spend that much money on it.
But you also got to think about, there's only 3 stores in America.
Right.
So you got New York, you got one in Brooklyn just opened up, you got LA that's been open since 2000, and you got the Middle America. They see what's going on. They're like, oh shit, like, what's going on in New York? Like, I live in Idaho. Oh, I see this shirt. Oh, I gotta have the shirt because I can't get from Idaho to New York on a Thursday just to get a shirt. Like, you know what I mean? So those kids are buying it too. You gotta think about like, just Texas and the places. You got people coming in the store like, yo, you should open up a store in Tennessee. Like, why the fuck would we open up a store in Tennessee?
Dude, there's so many. I feel like we could be here for like hours and hours, but there's so much I want to ask you about. Like, do you know like how many shirts will Supreme print?
It depends, because I don't know those numbers for sure, particularly, but I think a lot, enough for everybody to get. But you gotta think about it, the online store. The online store is the whole America and the whole Canada.
Okay.
So it's like everybody in the world is fighting for this shit. It's like, it's not just, that's why everything sells out within seconds, because it's not just, oh, Supreme New York. It's not just you can only buy it on the online in New York. You got the whole Canada.
Oh, my bad. Not to cut you off, bro, but like that was my point earlier about like how the internet has like changed the game for cats. So it's like how he said, like the online store is for basically everybody, Middle America and Canada, whereas before you had a lot of these like brands that a Stussy or something like that, where it's like you have the flagship stores and that's where you're getting it at, and if you don't know about it, then you just don't fucking know about it.
Yeah, you just don't get it. It's like, then you got like all these crazy websites popping up like StockX and shit like that. Like, StockX is potentially fucking the game up for these kids because StockX is like, oh, you bought it? We'll buy it for you for $10 right now over. Kids like, okay, because reselling is cool. This is what everybody's doing, so I'm gonna just do it. Not realizing that you got motherfuckers who like really make money for this shit. Like,
Shit. So okay, so I have one like little question is like, as someone, because like you skate, Brian skates, like all your friends skate, and you work at like what is really a skate shop.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel any type of way about how crazy it's been and how it's like? I feel like when a sort of subcultural thing or like a niche thing blows up and goes so mainstream, it's like the people that were the original. A lot of the times they feel like, oh, I knew about this rapper first. Like, fuck you guys. Like, is there any of that as a skater? Like, no.
I don't give a fuck. You know?
That's
like,
just because you're.
Yeah, it's just like, but
better person than me. I'm like, I knew about them first. You don't deserve to be listening to them.
But then
I'm
again,
definitely like that.
You got the people that just know, like, okay, that's Will. Like, he's been around for a while. Like, if you know, you know. If you don't know, then just buy this shit and get out the store. Like, I don't really, that don't really bother me, because the more hype you get, the longer I'm in the job, the longer I have a job, So it's like, I don't give a, like, now it's getting to the point where we got to cater to like Scandinavian families, and you got like Italian families is coming. Like, they just want whatever's in the store. They just want to be in the store and take a photo, which is kind of sick. You know what I mean? Because technically, as of right now, it's technically the biggest brand in the world at the moment.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, guys come out with a fucking brick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the most absurd shit ever.
Imagine having to carry those bricks.
Dude, do you have any insight on like when when Supreme sort of got like taken in? Well, you were saying diplomats.
Yeah, that was how I like really like it really became like came on my radar like that was seeing like Jewels and Jim Jones like back in whatever it was like 03 or some shit like that.
04, I think.
Yeah, 04.
So do you think it's like it's been a steady part of rappers since then,
No.
or were they just like the early adopters to go back to the Malcolm Gladwell thing?
Probably.
They were
like they like Jim Jones said he didn't even know what Supreme
Right.
was. He just did it to do it.
Yep.
But you got like I say it
so when did it really come back
like
then?
2010, 2011, like Odd Future, dude. Those
That's right.
they were the pillar of that company, bro.
Yeah.
For sure. Like
So they really like, and now it's crazy because Odd Future, they were like this crazy underground, like grimy vibe with like, I just think about like Tyler and Earl's first mixtape and the vibe that shit was on. And now it's like Supreme is like, I guess I'm saying Tyler and Earl weren't like the totally iced out watch, Gucci everything. They were the grimy skater kids who could really rap. And now it's like, even like the dude with the iced out watch is rocking the Supreme shit. So it's kind of crazy how it's gone from the underground vibe to like now it's like a luxury item up there with like Balenciaga and like you can imagine you could see a cat wearing Balenciaga shoes and a Supreme shirt and it's not like a what I mean?
thing,
No.
They're basically mismatching design in a sense. If you like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just crazy, But the longer it's crazy,
you're just riding the wave.
You're just riding the wave
till the wheels fall off.
Okay, so to turn it over to the other like big question we had, what do you think? I guess it depends on the different type of people that wear Supreme, but like, what do you think wearing Supreme says about just the average person? Let's take the actual skaters out of
the
it.
actual person.
Yeah, because like that's sort of the conversation we were having. Like, what is the fact that we want to get a Supreme shirt, or we even like we wear Nike shoes? What does that actually say about us?
Like speaking of Nike shoes, I was about to say that like at this point, wearing a piece of Supreme is like wearing Adidas track pants.
Yeah,
like it doesn't say anything about a person at this point. Now it's just like it was a point in time where it was like, oh shit, like he got that exclusive T-shirt, bro. Oh, like bro getting money, bro fly. But now it's like everybody has access. It, dude. Like it's access. It's now it's successful. Like when it reach everywhere.
And that's my point about shit. Is like the internet has fucked shit up.
Yeah.
Like the internet fucked shit up. Is the fact that now cats who are in Idaho can look and see like, oh, this is what the underground cats are wearing in New York, or this is what the skaters are rocking in LA, or whatever the fuck. It's like now we not only see what you're wearing, but now we have access to go get it. We can get it online. We can get it through resellers and all of that shit. So that idea of like having some like real sense of like, even if it's not individuality, it might be like your it might be a marker of you being part of a specific group, right? So like you rocking Supreme may not say anything inherently about you as a person, but it does say something about who you associate with or something, right? So it's like I'm rocking this shit back in the early 2000s. I'm a most likely underground skater kid, backpacker type shit, right? Whereas now he said it's like they're getting the families from Italy and shit flying in with bread. Like it's all over the place now, to the point that the same message or whatever that it, or that I guess you could say like that that idea that it bound all the skaters and shit who rocked it, that shit's gone because everybody's rocking it now.
Also, it does depend who you are in the world too. Like somebody might see you like, oh shit, like they like, because some people now, like certain countries is really not accessible.
Right.
But it's everywhere though. You know what I mean? Like I was in Thailand, like fools like the crazy knockoffs, like it's insane.
Oh yeah, the knockoff game is serious.
It is insane. So it's like they think this thing they were in is real. They don't give a fuck about my shit. You know what I mean? So it's like at this point, like it really doesn't
don't
even
matter.
Yeah.
Because like it's everywhere. Like walking to a mall in Thailand, I see like the Supreme like Louis V fake hat. I'm like, this is crazy. Like this is Thailand, bro. Like this is Thailand, dog.
This is
This is
right.
crazy. I'm like, this is insane. And like they advertise it too. Like, come in here, we have Supreme, we have. They don't know it's not real. But as long as they got that fucking logo on their chest, they don't give a fuck.
Right.
You know. And that's the thing about it. They don't. Nobody. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just so accessible at this point. Even if it's real or not, that logo is just so accessible. It just doesn't even like. Nobody is like superior at this point no more. You know, it's like I was a cool motherfucker in high school. I had all the hats and shit.
Right.
Like, not saying I was winning first, but I'm just saying like. Now I'm about the cool nigga no more. Like nobody, like you can't be that cool kid in high school no more.
Because it's unoriginal at this point.
Yeah.
Like the fact that, you know, it's become so accessible. You know, I keep referring back to the word banal, but it has become banal. Like it's just so like it's so fucking accessible at this point that it's just unoriginal and boring almost. It's just like, oh, for cats who are really looking at this shit, right? So like for you, like you don't care. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because you're really in it, right?
Yeah, like when I first got the job, I was hyped. Oh, I all these clothes, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Nah, I'm sorry, I don't want to take it. That's why. That's why I went from that. I just got into high fashion. You know what I mean? Like I can't wear this shit no more, bro. So like I wear it. I have to wear it. I'm not saying I don't like it. That's not. You know, I like it, guys. No, that's what I'm saying though. It's like it got so overwhelming. All the clothes that I just had in my and I wasn't wearing shit. Like I'm donating stuff every year, you know. But now, like I just got into now I'm just spending $400 on a Balenciaga tee on some dumb shit because I'm just like I don't want to like.
Yo, that's interesting. Okay, so do you think? How much do you think what Supreme does has like a trickle down effect on like what like a Balenciaga is doing? Do you think Balenciaga sees like, oh, this is the wave at Supreme. Like we gotta we gotta get in on that.
You gotta understand these companies been around so long. They fight to stay relevant.
Exactly.
So they're gonna do whatever they can to stay relevant. Like the Louis Vuitton collaboration.
Right.
We didn't have to do that. You know, I mean, they didn't have to do that. Excuse me, because they're way bigger. But they didn't have to do that. But how are you gonna stay relevant? Gucci with Dapper Dan.
Right.
Yo, we're losing the youth. What can we do to get the youth? Oh, Dapper Dan. Like it's like you got Balenciaga. Get these kids. You get into like this futuristic look. So Balenciaga comes out with these big ass bulky sneakers, and like everybody's like these companies been around for almost hundreds of years.
Right.
So they're like, yo, we can't lose our popularity.
The Balenciaga shit, they are probably the most egregious ones at like riding the wave, because like when you think about like trying to chase the cool, right, which is what like you essentially saying like these companies are doing to stay relevant, is like, okay, what's popping right now, what can we do to, you know, reach a younger demographic to make sure that we still have customers, you know, down the line or whatever, right? Think about like even for cats with Balenciaga, they reached outside of fashion to like appropriate shit that was, you know, deemed as cool. You look at the Bernie Sanders logo shit that they did,
and how T-shirt,
and how they like you see. So it's like the fact that you can like appropriate, like, here's Bernie Sanders, this old Jewish dude, you know, from Vermont via Brooklyn, who's like made socialism cool and shit, and here's his, you know, presidential campaign logo and shit like that, and now we're gonna take that energy, you know what I'm saying, and repackage that shit. Is just a clear sign of them like, oh, that's what's popping, so we fucking with that.
Yeah, it's like, like that the whole vote for Bernie thing. But then see, I saw that.
Yeah,
jumped on the wave.
Exactly.
I saw it.
So it worked.
I saw that shit. I'm like, this is fire. My dumb ass bought it. Then I ended up drying the shirt like a dumbass. Now it's fucked up. $400 down the drain.
Yeah, the shrinking shirt.
Yeah, that's trash.
Yeah. So, Will, how long do you think, if you had to put a number on, like, how long do you think this shit is gonna last?
Supreme? Or just all of this fashion shit in general.
This hype beast.
The hype. I would say
just everything, like
for when
palace and everything.
for when it's so sought after, like where cats are paying. Because I mean, even you saw it with the Yeezys. Like at first they were reselling for insane, and now it's like kind of cooled off, I'd say. But that was like a shorter lived thing. Obviously, Supreme has more longevity than that. But if you had to put a number on it, or do you think it's just going to keep going and going?
I think it's going to keep going, man. She's going to get different. It's going to get to the point where it's like it's really accessible now. But I think it's going to get to the point where it's just like extremely accessible. Like you know, like a box level tee everybody wants. We don't make those shits a lot. Speaking of box level tee, 25th anniversary, we did a fucking Swarovski crystal box. You know what I mean?
Right? Yeah, I
like,
saw that.
But like I said, like you see how like LV been around for hundreds of years, blah blah blah. Everybody's just gonna fight to stay relevant. They'll do whatever they gotta do to appeal to the mass. You know?
Yeah.
Like that's what's gonna happen forever. Like, I mean, I don't think the companies like all the hype companies are ever gonna die down. They just wanna try to stay relevant. I think Yeezy's done. Yeezy's done. I think Yeezy's done.
Yeah.
I think everybody's just done with Kanye and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah.
He's lost his mind, but that's neither here or there. But
We said the same thing because I made the point about Kanye earlier. Like Balenciaga like jumped on the like extra chunky, you know, shoe or whatever, and it was after the 700 came and really like changed that whole aesthetic, and it was just like, oh, okay, we about to take that shit and you know multiply it times 5 on y'all asses.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, LV even did like the little chunky shit that Jaden Smith was, you know, rocking on.
I don't understand the Balenciaga like sock one.
I hate those.
That
things.
one that shit makes my blood boil. I don't even understand how cats can even think that looks remotely good.
It ain't like they look good. It's just like, they look good at all. It's tacky. And
but it's intentionally tacky though, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's like this weird thing where
it
it's
is.
so tacky, it's
So cool.
It's
it's
cool.
cool.
Right.
It's like we said last time. It's like you're just wearing like a conversation piece in a certain
this
sense.
point, yeah.
Yeah, like
Like I was watching this thing. Like it was like it's a YouTube video of like kids in like I think it was Denmark. They were like fucking what were they doing? Oh, they were like going off how much their outfits cost. Like it was just a group of kids who just meet up in a park wearing the most insanely expensive like Balenciaga pieces or like whatever pieces, and it was just like they'll go off a list. Like it'd be like shoes, 1,200, and it would ching, and it was like and on the screen it'd be adding up. And these kids were wearing like $5,000 outfits just to go to a park and like meet up, just to talk about the outfits when you like bring up conversation pieces.
yeah.
Like whenever you get a chance, like check the video out.
But there's those IG pages that they'll take a picture of fucking Travis Scott shoes. Balenciaga, $400. Pants,
yeah.
like it breaks down the whole outfit.
And that brings me to my point. To my see, I knew I was gonna be able to mix it in. It's a fucking page on Instagram that's devoted to like preachers who are like hype beasts,
Like preachers of
God?
of Christ.
Like, what kind of preachers are we talking about?
like legit like preachers, and they're like up there with the Balenciagas and the Supreme and like it's
fuck.
And that's when it's just like is this shit cool? Like is it still cool? You know what I'm saying? Like at that point where we're like
that's so true, because it's like you find yourself in such like an untenable position when it's like when it's on the one hand like really really cool motherfuckers are wearing this shit and it's still a symbol of being cool, but then on the other hand it's so mainstream that like you're saying
right.
like these corny motherfuckers are wearing it, so
like back to the type of people who wear Supreme, like it's a fourth person, and like back to the relevancy, you got the old motherfucker who just wants to be cool. That's another one of the people. You ever saw that page of the old Instagram, the white dude?
Oh, the old white dude.
Who remakes the thing?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah.
I mean, he fly dude, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it's like, what are you doing? Like, what did your grandson talk you into doing?
Right.
Or like you didn't know how to work an iPhone. Somebody's teaching you this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, this is new to you. Like,
Right.
What are you doing? And he got his wife onto it. It's like, what? Like
It's attention.
Like you're saying, like preachers are like.
yeah, or like, just even like, or even the dynamic of like how crazy like hip hop went in like the white suburbs when like Wu-Tang was really going crazy, and it was like all the kids in the malls like really fucked, all the white kids in the suburban malls like really fucked with Wu-Tang. Now you have Supreme, still really cool and like accepted in the hip hop world, but then you have like these bratty white kids, and I only say that because like I've been at Supreme on Thursday and I've seen the little like 12-year-old white kids with their mom's credit card carrying out bags of shit, like wearing Yeezys, and it's like, so how can you make, like, how cool is it really if there are these little 12-year-old like little bratty motherfuckers that are going crazy over the shit?
Right.
It's like Fortnite, Supreme, like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, honestly,
like Ninja or
on
whatever.
the same level, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Ninja be doing a fucking Twitch and a Supreme shirt, like some weird shit like that. I hate that dude. But yeah, like it's like you even get the Brads and the Chads wearing the shit. Like kids coming in like Vineyard Vines with Nike socks and Sperry's with their little fucking tassel hanging out their pocket with their college on it. Like, dude, like hey, bro, like, what's the cool sick thing to get? Like, yo, leave me alone, dude.
God, that's so cringe.
That's it.
Yo, it's cringe, dude. It's like, I'd be like, bro, are you serious? Like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, bro,
chasing the cool.
Like, seriously,
chasing it.
Yeah.
Like the fucking Zygamma brodies coming in like.
Sigma Jigma?
Sigma Jigma
is popping in Supreme.
Like, dude, like what's the sick thing?
And wait, they'll really like ask you?
Yeah.
Oh, you need to record that shit.
Yes.
Like, dude, like I go back to school like in August. Like, well, we'd be sick. Like, get a fucking book bag to go back to school.
Wow.
They do have like the moms, dude. Like, the old like Italian moms. They're crazy,
bankrolling the wardrobe.
Right.
The one mom yesterday hit me with the Will, you changed your hair again. I was like, no, I just took my braids out. Like, you know what I mean? It's like they don't understand. Like, you always changing your hair. Just call it braids, miss. Like, just shop, please.
just buy your $300-400 worth of Supreme and get on.
And these moms be coming in with like lists from their children.
Right, I've seen that. I've seen the lists.
It'd be moms just like on the line. Like, I'd be like, yo, my mother wouldn't even spend $70 on sneakers when I was younger. I meant like $100 on a fucking t-shirt.
Oh yeah. That's how you know it's like
these kids just whiny, bro. To get what they want.
It's crazy how much just this one brand affects like all different demographics and stratospheres. Like everyone has some kind of relationship to it.
It's insane. I wonder if Australians wear it.
Fuck Australians.
Yeah,
the podcast's official position is fuck Australians.
They're the worst.
Really?
Yeah.
I used to work for a company that was run by Australians. And
they're oblivious, bro.
They're like really tone deaf when it comes to this shit. Not this, but like it's just like cringy. They wanted to move to New York so they could see some like quote real shit, but really what they meant was just like, let's go like try to hang with some black people and like, oh, there's homeless people here and like that's real. Like there's no real sense of like any kind of like social struggle. I feel like over in Australia, and for the most part, like it's a lot of like white people who are doing relatively okay. So it's like they don't have any kind of sense of like
shit.
Yeah,
they're oblivious to everything.
So it's a bubble in that sense.
Yeah, it's a bubble. Like they come, they go come in. Hey, mate, let me touch your hair. Like, bro,
oh, I can totally see them doing some shit
mate,
like
like you play basketball, like, bro.
Right.
Oh, that's
the women love us Americans, though. I'll tell you that for sure. You go to Australia, you live. You might get to. I've never been, but I'm going in February. You might get to a couple.
Okay, so we like Australians. Will loves Australians.
Australian women.
Australian women.
But nah, like they're just the worst people.
All right, so maybe on that note,
I know.
Yo, this was I think one of our best podcasts. This is so sick. Yo, thank you, Will.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah.
Now that you mention